that we all lean on when we're talking about these conceptions. So that's really cool. Eric Drexler's Eric Drexler's nanobots. He's probably a little ambitious sometimes in his timescales, but I have no doubt that a lot of those technologies are on their way. They're coming, and I think they are going to be absolutely fundamental to changing the landscape. And Nick Bostrom is interesting. You talk about him because he focuses on the positives of technological change, but he also concentrates on existential crises and how to overcome them, or defining what they are, which is just something that you emphasize, that you focused on as well. What do you see as some big existential threats that are coming down the pipeline, if any?
So to frame this, I'd say I'm more optimistic than pessimistic, in the sense that if I look ahead to the middle of the century and I imagine the range of possible future scenarios, more of them are wonderfully positive than negative. I say about 60% chance by the middle of the century we'll be living in a sustainable superabundance. But there's also quite a high likelihood, I say about 30%, that one of a number of things will have gone badly wrong with society. It might be as straightforward as a nuclear war, which I used to worry about when I was a student. That was a great deal of discussion then. We seem to have avoided it for the time being, but the threat's still there, especially as the technology is in the hands of more nations and even sub-nation states, groups of people who are angry and upset with the world, and who knows what they might do. I'm very concerned too about another possible existential threat, which is climate change. It's not so much today's climate change I worry about, and that is serious. It is causing, as you know, in Australia, unprecedented extremes of weather. And we can't pin any one extreme in weather to climate change, but overall the odds are higher. But it's not today's climate change. If I go back to this exponential curve that I was talking about earlier, it's where it might take us, perhaps sooner than we expect, due to the same kind of positive feedback cycles, although in this case the outcome of the positive feedback would be very negative. So I think that deserves attention. But then there's the potential of AI being increasingly misused. And we already are seeing outcomes of misuse of artificial intelligence in our social media. For example, Facebook and YouTube are set up as commercial entities. And of course, the founders of these organizations have strong humanitarian instincts, but the reality of the technology is often pushes us against our better instincts. So many discussions on Facebook are quite emotionally charged. Why? Because in a sense, Facebook thrives on people engaging, and what makes people engage is a surge of emotion. And so it's already pushing people away from the better angels of our nature often, and letting more of the inner demons come out. And this is an example of how technology itself is neutral in what it can do, either wonderful things or bad things, but if we're not careful, the bad will dominate. And what we're seeing today with the distortion of people's free will, which is happening to an extent by clever advertising, clever marketing, it's leading us from time to time to buy things we probably shouldn't buy, to click on links we probably shouldn't click on, and maybe even to vote for people we shouldn't vote for. What we're seeing today could be 10 times or even 100 times worse in the future if AI becomes more powerful and political leaders or sub-state groups use it to manipulate the rest of us for their interests. And that could get worse and worse the more powerful technology goes. Eliezer Yudkowsky has a phrase which he dubs Moore's law of mad science. It riffs on the idea of Moore's law, which is every 18 months, computing technology is roughly twice as powerful. He said something like every 18 months, the IQ necessary for somebody to destroy the whole world comes down by a few points. That is, you get an angry but clever person who is deeply alienated from the world, deeply upset for various reasons, and instead of just grabbing an assault rifle and shooting far too many people already, they might grab a hold of a much more powerful technology. Not yet an atomic bomb, but in the future, who knows? And they might also do huge disruption to our cyber structure. So AI by itself is going to make people more powerful, but power doesn't necessarily lead to more goodness. That's why we need to set a much more positive techno-progressive vision, along with some constraints on how this technology is distributed and can be accessed and can be assembled and deployed.
Yeah, and that's true. And I remember in another podcast you did, you talked about North Korea having quite capable cyber capabilities, and I've always said that, and people have kind of laughed at me because they only see Kim Jong-un walking in a room with these old 90s computers, but that's not the truth. The truth is that they get some from China, but they do have sophisticated cyber. So the state actors, that's the argument, that these can go up to the state actor levels. And there's got to be some sort of international regulation, international law and order on this. Otherwise, you do end up with an arms race, or you do end up with some sort of destructive progression, and that's not what we want to achieve. We want a safe, ethical AI that's produced within reason, and we only have one chance a lot of the time for some of this AI and some of these technologies to get it right, to lay out the frameworks, and when they're switched on or when they're delivered into the ecosystem, I mean, that'll be it. Especially when we're talking about general AI or super AI or some sort of cognitive AI or something without the correct parameters. I mean, this is not good. And I'm glad you mentioned as well the IQ issue, the access to information. Already that's come down. Already, if you look around your cities in any modern city today, kids have iPads. I mean, that is a transhumanist tech. That's fundamental. Like they're on these elegant machines from as young as you can get, but you go back 100 years, you go back 30 years, and this was science fiction. Totally, it's becoming integrated with the human species. We're merging already. This is just external, not internal, but and that's where we talk about new release and all this other stuff. But yeah, that's so many great points in there. Thank you very much for bringing that to light. But on this show, we want to talk about techno-progressive goals and how to actually achieve some of that and work towards some policies. So you're in the UK there, and you have a techno-progressive roadmap for the UK 2019, where we're at now, to 2035. What was the inspiration? Who helped you do this? What is it? Give us a rundown, David Wood in the UK.
So it's my view that we need a powerful vision to help us escape from our day-to-day concerns. Most people do focus on the present, of course. It demands attention, but sometimes we need to raise our eyes and see the bigger horizon. And the view is that if we can pick out a number of goals, not to be done in the next week or even the year or even within the current electoral cycle, say 5 years, we can pick something, a time horizon that's further away, but still within people's thinking conception. So we thought the year 2035, which is 15 years into the future, 15 and a bit, and a number of goals that actually could be achieved by then if society gets itself together. If society does set its mind on things, tremendous progress can be made, as we can sort of see from, in a bad sense, from what happened in wartime. So much progress and so much technology with an existential threat against a country in that stage. So let's set out a vision. I was also partially inspired by meeting a bunch of parliamentarians in the UK's Parliament. They have set up something called an all-party parliamentary group on longevity. So it's mainly people in our upper house, that's the House of Lords, the people who are experts. Some of them are former politicians, but there were some people from the lower house, the House of Commons, mixing there too. And they have set up a goal, which at first sight seemed impressive, but on second sight isn't ambitious at all. They set the goal that in 2035, that the health span, the average health span of people in the UK will have been raised by 5 years. And so that's what they want to work towards. And in one sense, it's ambitious because sadly, the average health span in the UK is actually slightly moving downwards. And if I can just explain that, health span is the amount of time in your life in which you can live happily, independently. You're not dependent on a regular medical